So let's see what it does here. It's actually trying to take this turn, and it just jumped a lane. I apologize for the person behind me. Hey guys, what's going on? FXR here. Just trying to do a little autopilot testing, just driving around and checking out what autopilot does and reacts to, and some of the things that may annoy me, some of the things it does well. I haven't really driven on this street a whole lot, but I guess we'll just find out, so do it together. So I might cut in and out on this video just to see, you know, if anything pops up interesting or not interesting. I noticed there's some construction here. Again, I'm not completely familiar with this road, so I have no idea what's ahead of us. Anyways, check back in, see if there's something of interest or disinterest. Alright, check you out later. Boring road here. Let's see if we can take a left or a right, find maybe a highway or something a bit more complex. Let's see. So autopilot, it's great. You know, on the highway things are kind of flowing, but when you use them on these local roads like you just saw there, I as a human will put on the brake and slow down and adjust my speed and make it a comfortable stop. Autopilot doesn't quite work that way. It doesn't know, I guess, intuitively to apply the brake, slow down, don't jerk people's necks that are passengers or the driver in the car by suddenly applying the brakes and reducing the speed limit to, or the speed to come to a complete stop. So that's like one gripe I have with using autopilot on non-highway roads. It's not very intuitive in terms of stopping for cars that are waiting for the light to change. So I hope there's improvement to that, and I don't know if it's based on the neural net completely from the computer learning, or if it's based on information from human drivers and their input. I know I definitely don't stop that way, so it's not my information or data that's feeding this system. So I'm hoping that there's eventually a comprehensive data set that the car can use and learn from, and understand that you don't want to jerk the heads of people in the car as it's driving and as it's coming to a complete stop. So that's something I think can be improved upon. The AI executed moves, strategies, and unit composition that was not typical of any human. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I've noticed with autopilot executes lane changes and merging, converging lanes, things like that I don't think a human would typically make. And so I guess that's one of my biggest criticisms right now, is that while this is learning, while this is improving, there are times where the neural net or the autopilot does not perform natural human moves, maneuvers, and executions. And to me, it goes back to what those professional gamers are saying, that they had no way or a real sense of how to predict what the AI would do, what the AI would execute, how it would move its composition around and across the map and engage the human. And I feel there may come a time where perhaps autopilot is so far removed from how humans drive, how they would react, how they would execute, that perhaps driving alongside autopilot, it will be more difficult to predict. And is that the fault of autopilot? Perhaps not. Perhaps, it's humans' poor decision making, poor executing the vehicle across lanes, across a route, and it's something that I think there'll be conflict and points of contention on. It's not safe, or it's not predictable, and it's difficult to understand. And the truth is that perhaps the autopilot system will get to a point where it has transcended human driving capabilities. So it's just an important aspect of autopilot versus human driving that we should all consider, that we should all realize that while autopilot may reduce crashes, may reduce fatalities, and I understand that's the goal of Tesla, it may do that at the expense of unpredictability to the other human drivers on the road. So it's not to knock autopilot at all. It's just, I think, a reality in which we'll all have to face, and we'll need to be prepared for providing the data that might support autopilot, or might support changes within how we train drivers, how we educate drivers in driver ed school, and it requires us to examine and re-examine how we currently execute the way we drive. Now, I don't have the answers for all that, but I think it's worth the discussion. I commend Tesla for accumulating data first in-house and proving the capabilities of the system prior to getting regulatory approval, because otherwise, it could kill the system before it even really gets off to a good start now. So the system did well there. It's just our drivers really suck. So, all right. So we've got this in autopilot. We're about to enter the highway. I don't have my hands on the wheel. It's a fairly simple maneuver right here. But let's see how autopilot negotiates this lane merge. Currently, the system is autopilot without, I guess, the driver confirmation for the lane change. So right now, in my rear view mirror, I see cars incoming. Looks like people have changed their lane, which is very nice. Actually, you don't see that very often here in Dallas. So yeah, that basically executed a lane change. I have my hand at the bottom of the wheel, and in order to execute that lane change, the wheel does, or the system does, ask for you to provide feedback on the wheel to execute the change. So it's still basically human confirmation. You just don't need to use the drive stalk up, down for the left and right, which is nice. I like it. It's much more intuitive. I guess if you want to see it this way, it frees up this hand to do whatever it is that you need to do, whether it is closing something or grabbing something from storage, or just speaking with your hands. It frees that up, and it keeps you in a relaxed position. So the system is very good about asking to apply turning force on the wheel, and I simply do that by resting my hand at the bottom and moving it either to the right or to the left, and I apply pressure typically with my thumb. So that just executed the lane change right there. I did not do anything. Everything was clear in terms of the road. The cars behind me and around me. No gripes there. Autopilot executed excellently on the left lane, and it should be taking a slight left. I think the lane converges to a single lane as we exit, but we'll find out in a moment. So this lane ends. It does ask to merge right, so this is the lane converge here. So this lane is wide. It always tries to center itself. This was much smoother than I've experienced. Sometimes the path it takes to center is quite severe. It will veer hard right, hard left to center justify itself, which is not very comfortable. I'm not sure why the speed limit is listed 75. That's typically not 75 on this highway. I guess that's in the map data. Okay, so here we got cars coming up on the right. Everything's clear. Cars starting to slow down. I guess it's tracking the black Mustang in front of us. Kind of annoying. So I am not entirely sure why the system is slowing down to 50 miles per hour, but we've got it set to 70. So that was a little annoying. Alright, apply some force. It's center justifying itself within this lane. It's a wide lane. It comes down to a normal size lane. So here we got an exit coming up in about 2.5 miles or so. Everything should be pretty smooth sailing here. There are a couple ramps that on ramps, so we might see some lane merging or people cutting in a little early. I haven't really witnessed truly early lane cut-ins or on-ramp entries, so I haven't seen how the system responds to that, but I imagine the line data or the lane data gets overridden and it focuses on the car that's now being sensed with the sensors and confirmed by the cameras. The cameras are really a redundancy, I think, and the sensors do a pretty good job. So here, even though we have an exit coming up in about 2 miles, the car wants me to move over here to the left lane. So we'll see how that plays out, see if the flow of the car and the traffic is any better. Sometimes autopilot suggests these lane changes, and intuitively you would think maybe just stay in the right lane, but sometimes it wants you to go left, and it seems to be playing out okay. We're passing cars, our speed has increased, so it's going well. Getting a little chilly here, so I'm going to adjust the AC. So it is telling us that there is an upcoming lane change. It is highlighting that lane with a thick, broad lane down the center of the lane it's intending to switch to. We'll see when it decides to execute that maneuver. See, I would do it here after this car. In between that car, I would execute a lane change. And there we go. Autopilot's doing it. There's a car up here to the right. Let's see. Okay, did well. Excellent. So that was successful. I'd say there's about an 85% success rate with a comfortable lane change. Let's preface that. Comfortable lane change. Just trying to execute a lane change here. We've got a car coming up on the right. He's kind of feeling it out himself. There's a car behind me. Okay, so we're doing it. It worked. That worked well. What I run into a lot here in Dallas, people behind you, they don't give a fuck if you want to change lanes. You can signal all day and they don't care. So I get a little anxious sometimes when autopilot does not execute a maneuver as quickly as I would. I understand that. I guess that's maybe the human part of me, being just conscious of other drivers, and just how they would expect me to drive. They're assholes, so you have to consider that. Alright, not a highway road. Let's see if this executes this. Nope. See, so that was a right lane. It was a right turn only lane. And autopilot did not know to get out of that lane. So everything went well up until that point. So that's a little bit of human intuition, I guess. Perhaps I should have intervened within the, because this isn't, let's preface this. That move was not executed on Navigate on autopilot. So there were no parameters for the car to use to help navigate it on that route. We are now simply on autopilot. So that's why that failed. And I think that's why expectations of what the system can do and what it's capable of, when you should use it, when you shouldn't use it, that's how that all comes into play. So I would see some people argue that it should have changed lanes sooner to the left. Let's see what it does here. So it's got a decision. Take the left turn lane or keep going. So it hesitated there. The wheel, you could sense the thinking was straining the machine what lane to take, and it chose correctly. So just as a reminder, we've been using autopilot with 1 car distance. That's what it's using to gauge a lot of the stopping, accelerating. So, you know, there's a slight delay there for the acceleration after it stops for a vehicle to execute a turn, and you know, that could get annoying. And so it picked up that car that was just turning. So that is something that I feel is a bit lacks intuition. You know, you and I, we see that car, we can gauge the rate of acceleration and the chances of us actually colliding, given our speed and acceleration, are zero. Like, that's just not going to happen. So here, autopilot just skipped a lane, or just at least chose one in the center. At this particular point, it didn't matter, but perhaps at any other time, our maneuver, that would have been a wrong lane to choose. Light is green. Let's see what it does here. Alright, so it wants to go left. I probably would have chose to have it continue going forward, but this is what it did. So let's see what it does here. It's actually trying to take this turn, and it just jumped a lane. I apologize for the person behind me. So here again, stops, makes almost a complete stop. And then the acceleration after that, the recovery time, is too slow for my taste. I would have just went for it. I tend to be a lead foot, so to me, that delay there after the lane change is too long. That was an excellent lane change there. Kept a good speed. This car moved out. There was a stopped car here, and it stopped. Executed beautifully. These are solid lane lines. Get up to speed there. Not entirely sure what happened. There we go. So sometimes autopilot freaks out for reasons I do not know. See, this is one thing about autopilot. Sometimes it recognizes the ramps as 35 or 40 miles per hour, which maybe that's the way this ramp was designed, but nobody really drives that way. So you're just kind of pissing people off behind you. So there's a disabled car here. Let's see what it does. Just kind of blows right by. Blows right by that one. Alrighty. I need to be over here in the left lane. Navigate on autopilot is not on right now. This is just regular autopilot with GPS navigation. Nope. Not even close. So autopilot was basically going to just keep barreling forward. There's no chance for it to actually pick up. There were lines, they were painted there. So these turns, I don't know. It's going to have to learn them somehow, somewhere. A lot of driver profile information and data. They're going to have to feed that. Hey, I'm seeing my twin here. No wave back. Oh well. I'm gonna keep doing that. You Tesla drivers out there are gonna wave at me one of these days. We need to get this wave going. So this truck is turning left. Alright. Turn left. Now we're at a red. I really would have liked autopilot to negotiate this, but I guess it's not gonna happen. Probably end the video here. There's not a whole lot going on, and well, I think we're at the end of this journey. Thanks for joining, guys. Come back later for some more drive alongs and see what happens. Peace.